Thanks for being across the table with us. I'm Angela.
And I'm Kimberly.
And we are so excited to be back with you all. We have definitely taken some time off over the past couple of months, and we are so thrilled that a lot of you have been missing us. We've gotten some texts and messages about, hey, are you coming back on? We miss you, and just look forward to hearing what you have to say. And we can't even tell you how amazing that is, because our whole heart here at Across the Table is just share life with you. And so we are ready to ramp up 2020. We've got some ideas planned, and we're just excited. The reason that we took off a little bit of time is one that's a little bit personal, and we wanted to share that with you today. Sometimes in life we go through things, and it affects our health, both physically and mentally, and we have to learn how to take time for ourselves. And that is something that happened, and it happened to Kimberly, and we wanted to share that with you today. A little bit about her struggles and how she navigated through it and where she's at today. And the reason that we want to do this is not to just tell her story, but in the end to help any of you that are going through something, because you're not alone. And that's what this is all about. And so we go through things in life where, we're going through the normal, and we go on ups and downs, and then life changes into something that's more than just normal. So that's really what we're going to navigate through today. So I want to spend most of the time talking with Kimberly today and having her tell us her story. So I thought we would start with, maybe Kimberly, you could tell us about, how did you determine when your life wasn't just the normal ups and downs? Like, how did you figure out that something was different?
Sure. First of all, I want to say thank you, because you've given me so much grace over this time. I'm going to cry. And I just appreciate you for giving me space to really take time to heal and to get back to who I am and walk through it with me. I just appreciate that. I appreciate each of you for giving us a space where we can talk about this and connect. Mental health is one of those things where mental health, I hope I said that. It didn't sound like mental health. Sometimes it does feel like mental health sometimes. But mental health is one of those things where it doesn't necessarily come on quickly. It can feel like that in moments. What is so beautiful to me is that I know that God goes before me and that he is always with me. That's what Deuteronomy 31:8. And I love that, because when I look back of going through this dark season, I see how God went before me in preparing me for this. So a couple of years ago, we moved from Washington to Arizona, and I had my hands in so many different things up there that taking care of myself wasn't necessarily something I made time for. And when I came here, all of a sudden I had all this time, and then my stress that I didn't think I had was starting to manifest itself physically, where I had numbness and I had migraines and blurred vision and just a slew of things. And I felt it up there in Washington. I was seeing a chiropractor, but it just wasn't necessarily healing me. It was just making things prolonged, if that makes sense. And so coming here, I was able to see eye specialists, and I was able to get into a great neurologist, and they ran all kinds of tests. And through that, I learned that I had traumas from my past that I never really dealt with. And I got plugged in with an incredible counselor. I was using natural wellness to just get back to where I needed to be. And so I started that journey about a year and a half ago. And now that I've gone through this dark season, I see where God put me in line with these great resources and had all of that happen, so that when I was going through this, I was equipped with the tools that I needed to walk through it. And so I'm just really grateful for his love. when it really sunk in was just getting, I'll just be completely transparent. First of all, I don't want to ever, I think it's important that we share our stories, and your story matters. And through your experiences, that's how you connect with others, and we learn so much through other people's stories. But there's also parts of my story that are not my story to tell because it impacts other people. And so I want to honor those people through this. So if you feel at times that I'm being vague in my story, it's only out of respect for those that I love dearly that are part of this. But I received a phone call from somebody that I truly love, and they basically said, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you're doing really well. And we're in a bad season, and we don't want to bring you down. And of course, when you love people, you want to be able to be there for them. And I didn't realize, the irony in all of this is that them trying to not bring me down is actually what shot me into a depression. And that's not funny. I say it sarcastically because that's just how I deal with things. But it was heartbreaking. And so that is when I started to kind of spiral a little bit. And in spiraling, I'm very, I'm an introvert, but I'm an extrovert. It's one of those, I grew up very shy, and I had to kind of faith it till I make it. But when I'm going through hard times, I realize that little girl inside of me, I go back into my shell very easily when I'm going through things. And I think it's because God gave me the natural gift of encouragement. And so when I'm going through a hard time, it's hard for me to give encouragement when I need it. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, especially if you have that gift of encouragement, and then you're this relationship that you love so much is telling you, I don't want your encouragement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be it, because yourself, sometimes, even though that's not how we like to define ourselves, sometimes our self-worth, we define it by who we are and what we do. And so if you're being told, I don't want this, I'm sure that didn't help you.
That definitely impacted me. We talked a lot about this in our podcast or the vlog, of how it's really important that we set ourselves apart by being you, right? God made you for a purpose. Just as much as he made one earth, he made one you. And when you compare yourself to something so ginormous as that and see how life-giving that is for a multitude of people, and then you pull it into something that's so personal as yourself, you realize the God of all creation created one of you because you are life-giving, and he wanted that. And so going through this and hearing that from someone I even asked them on that phone call, why am I not enough? And to say that just broke my heart, because that's my passion, is
you are enough.
When I hear women especially say, I'm not enough, that is the one thing that I've always told God, break my heart for what breaks yours. And that is the part of me that just breaks. And so when I heard myself say that out loud, I knew that it was not so much about that person, but it really was a spiritual attack on me. And I still love this person dearly. We still don't have a relationship at this point, but I had to get to a point where I own who I am, and I don't allow what other people say or make me feel, even if that's not their intention, to impact the way that I know God sees me. And so it's just been a journey of walking through that.
Right.
And trusting that.
So tell me, without going into, anything that's going to, like you said, not honor other people, but what did you do to get you from being broken to, I can see the light again, or I'm starting to see the light again? But what did you do from there?
It's still a journey. I'm not over it. I don't know if you ever do get over it. I don't know if you've ever lost someone that's very close to you. When you go through a loss, you find that grief comes in waves, right? And so understanding that you're going to have those waves is really important. I think what helps me is that knowing that he's there wave after wave after wave was really powerful. I heard a sermon at our church about goal setting and how, more specifically around like New Year's resolutions, where we have, I want to lose weight. And so compare it to food, right? And you're like, so I see these gummy bears, and my instinct is I see those gummy bears, and so I'm going to eat the gummy bears because they're going to make me feel good, right? So there's this cue of seeing the gummy bears, and there's this response to eat them, and then there's the reward of I'm going to feel good about that.
Until later.
Yeah. And then when I started to think about how God works that way, not just physically, but actually emotionally and spiritually, I started to realize like my pain is a cue. That emotion that we feel is a cue. And how I respond to it is going to impact that outcome that I want or that I need. And so when we look at that, like pain really is a gift because it spurs you into action. And so I just started to pray about that and just talk about like, okay, Lord, if I'm going to go through this, then anytime I'm feeling sad, I want that cue to be, I'm going to need some Kleenex. I want that cue to be that my response is to go to you. And I love my husband dearly, but he's not my number one. God is. And so I needed that to go to him because the outcome that I ultimately want is peace. And the only way that I'm going to get that peace that surpasses all understanding is through the Lord. So that was really huge. I allowed myself to feel the pain, which I think is super important. And that was
huge.
Oh, so hard. I love Jesus, but I like wine too. I know that people say that a lot. I'm a social person. So, when you're being social, you're around food and wine and coffee dates and all these things. And I was starting to recognize, and this isn't for everybody, so I'm not saying bad things about that stuff at all. But for me, I realized that food became my comfort, and instead of going to God, I was going to food. And so I had to ask myself, why am I eating that, or why am I drinking that? And it was more as a comfort or to take the edge off. And so I gave up drinking wine, and maybe I'll drink it again at some point, but at this time, because I'm going through these emotions, I want to allow my body to feel that pain so that I can hear more deeply what he's saying.
So good.
Being able to feel that pain and turn to him and get that peace was really huge. Through it, though, again, with the waves and everything, it is important to have someone to go to. The Bible says, seek wise counsel. And I love my friends and I love my husband, but what they do is they tend to encourage you, which is great. But I also needed real help. And so I want to encourage you that if you're going through something, to find a Christian counselor. My Christian counselor has been so helpful in giving me tools. And I only meet with her once a month. Maybe it's once a week that you meet with someone. Maybe it's every day. Maybe it's every other month, or maybe it's once a quarter. I don't care. Do what you have to do, but find someone that is going to equip you with scripture and that will tell you. I mean, she has told me, Kimberly, this is when this part is in your control. So you need to do this. And it was not like, oh my gosh, you've done everything, so just sit back kind of a thing. And then we did get to a point where she was like, you know what? This is your circle that you're in control of, but outside of this, like, that is God. And at some point, you need to just release it to him. And I'm a control freak. So that was really hard for me, and it's still something I struggle with. I just want to fix things. When someone's upset with me or when someone's going through a lot, I want to be there. And my 2 and the Enneagram comes out. I love Angela. She's a 2. I'm an 8, but I find myself wanting to fix that. And so not being able to, and learning through that wise counsel that there's a reason why God says, be still and just know that I am God. Like, I'm not, but know that he's in control, and trust that. That was a big part of seeing the counselor, was learning that the same God that I'm trusting to walk me through these waves is also walking those other people through things too. He's working on their hearts. So that's when I started to see more of the light of understanding there's a bigger picture in this. It's not just about me.
I love what you said about the control. As women and men, we're, as humans, I should say, we want to control. We want to fix everything, and we want to just know that by our work that we're going to get it done, or we can change things, or if it's not right, we can fix it. And we go through that as women, as moms, as in our workforce. And so that piece of what you were talking about, how she just guided you to see, this is your control, this is God's control, and especially like you said, you are an 8, and so that I can definitely see that. So I'm sure that she's also helped you establish boundaries. So talk about that, because I know that you probably have in your head now boundaries that maybe you had before that you thought you had. And then now you have future and current boundaries with relationships. Did you add anything to that, to your list? Or is that just kind of, you just kind of honed in on it a little bit more?
So that's part of the awesome part of this is where I can honestly say I love the depression that I went through. I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but I love it because I've grown so much, and I never had boundaries before, which is really interesting and scary. I think it's great when you can. I always said I would rather be naive and love so hard than to be jaded and not trust anyone. But there is a balance in that, and boundaries are healthy. What I learned, though, is that I didn't have boundaries, but there were times where I had walls. And there's difference between boundaries and walls, where boundaries are, here's the parameter, but you can let people in those and then weave them back out. And it's kind of like my counselor, she described it as a gate, where you open a gate and you can close it a little bit, or you can open it more based on someone just showing their patterns. And so I had found that I had walls, even with my in-loves that are amazing. I just was so afraid of getting really close to people. I had walls with my husband at points, just that fear of getting too close to someone and them using my weakest moments against me, because that was the pattern of what I was seeing in these other relationships. And so I was always trying to prove myself to everybody else that I am not that, instead of turning to God, who is like, no, you are not that. You are my daughter. And so learning that helped me to look at the patterns of the people that were ready to receive my love and willing to accept it, that's okay to not have boundaries with them, that I can love them fully, but then to see the patterns that other people have, not just with me, but with other relationships in their life. That just gave me so much clarity of, it's healthy to have a boundary there, because they're still growing too.
So you're saying that you look at, before, if it's a new relationship, let's say, you would see the patterns of their other relationships before you determine whether there's going to be a boundary or not.
Yeah,
or how much vulnerability you're going to share.
Right. So I'm more aware now of when I'm making friendships of having boundaries already established, and as I see their fruit or their patterns or their behaviors toward others than with me, that it allows me to open that gate a little bit more.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Patterns on. Okay. So what would you, I know you've mentioned a few things and that you actually said that you loved going through this, which is amazing. But what is the biggest thing that you have learned, like if personally from your journey?
Oh, so much. I actually took notes on that because I felt like there's just so many and I don't even know that I'm going to get through it all. But boundaries are huge. That was really big. Standing up for myself. And this also comes from seeing the neurologist and the neurologist pointing out, everything came back normal on your MRI. Have you gone through trauma in your past? And me being like, no, I'm good. And then realizing later, oh, actually I did have trauma. And he said, let's change your diet. And changing that diet brought back all these memories that I had blocked out. And so then when this confrontation happened over that phone call, I had such clarity in that moment. It was just like such a God moment of, wow, all this work that I've been doing over the last year because God went before me and had me make these changes, gave me clarity for this moment. And so I was able to really stand up for myself and speak truth and be firm, but with love and just love for myself of this is actually what happened. And so that was really powerful, using my voice. Right now, this is so terrifying talking to you guys because I do want to honor those people and know that they are on their own walk too. But I want to be able to share my story as well because I know that there's others that are walking through this too. And so we can walk through it together. I see you. You're not alone. Learning to be still.
So hard.
Right.
We've talked about this before, right?
That is one of the hardest things
it
ever.
Is.
But it is part
so
of that,
important, though.
That circle of knowing this is my control, this is God's, and just being still knowing He's taking care of it. And in the same way that He went before me before without me even realizing, He's doing that now. He's hearing conversations that I'm not hearing. And so He's working on those things and protecting me, really, in this moment. And so as hard as it is to be still, I really do feel like it is a shield of protection that He has over me in that moment. So hard. Resting. I never was one to rest. And so even taking time from this was needed. So hard, but needed. And God created rest, not because He needed it, but to be an example for us if He knew that we need it.
Eliminating yourself from activity, there's the must-haves and then there's the, this is,
Yeah. And I haven't been perfect through this. There's been some communication in between and through the holidays. It was hard, and I learned that there were areas that I need to work on myself. Again, that inner circle that's within my control that God revealed to me. Like when someone pushes me, I respond in anger at times, and I don't like to admit that, but that was an area that I needed to work on. So I learned to confess like my part in it and admit when I was wrong and ask for forgiveness, even when someone has hurt me, to just say, you may have said this, but this is how I responded and that wasn't right, and I'm so sorry. And praying a lot, trusting again that He's working on them, embracing that hurt, because I was always the person that shoved it under a rug or stuffed it down deep, and I survived, I'm fine. There are people that are worse off. Just because there's people that are worse off doesn't mean that what you're going through isn't real.
Right.
And so embracing where you're at, learning to love yourself, and loving those that, again, are ready to receive your love. There's a lot that I learned through it.
You have been so authentic in your whole journey of this, and I have watched you go through it, and for you to be so real and figure it out is just so inspiring. You realized that you needed help, and you didn't hide it, and I think that we tend to do that. Like you said, you finally figured out, like, I'm not going to push this down any further, and I'm not going to pretend that everything is okay. And so I just applaud you for just continuing to go through it because you are a different person from where you were a couple months ago when you were in a bad place. And so I know that you're still growing, and I know that you mentioned that you're not in the most perfect spot even as of today, but your heart is in the right place, and you are continuing to trust that God has the perfect plan for you. Thanks. And so I know that there's some of you watching who are wondering, what I'm going through am I pushing it down? Am I just, somebody else is worse off than me, so I should just get through this, power through. That's what we tend to tell ourselves, and it's going to get better, right? So Kimberly, from your perspective, what advice would you give somebody else that is going through a dark time?
I mean, that's such a great question. I personally believe everyone needs a counselor, and a Christian counselor at that. One of the things that we read in our Bible study, we're going through the Core 52 book by Mark Moore, and we were reading about the cross. And what struck me, and this is where, again, God goes before me, and so this book was already written. He knew that I was going to be in this Bible study, and at that moment that I needed to hear this, and he was talking about how Christ died for our sins, and we're to die to ourselves, and what that means. And it was just an affirmation of what I've been working through, because even when I've been talking with my best friend through this, I always say Twardowskis do tough things to my kids. I'm like, Twardowskis do tough things. And I need to be an example of that to my boys. And the reason why I do the hard things and I work through this and I'm going through the personal development of this and I'm seeking a counselor is not just for myself. That's great, and I'm all for personal development. But I knew that if I can model this for my kids, it's going to be less sin that they have to face as they grow. And so what I mean by that is that when we die to ourselves and we are obedient to Christ, and when we do the right things, so even if you're not a believer, when you start to do the right things, even when you feel you're right and someone's hurt you, just to step in and understand why they're doing something that's hurting you and not taking it personally and seeing that bigger picture, it lessens the effects of sin, or it lessens the effects of bad behaviors or patterns. And when you're able to break those generational chains, there's no better feeling than that. So I would say if you're going through something hard, do the hard things, let yourself feel that emotion, and get yourself a really great counselor that you can trust. And if you need resources, and just let us know, and we'll see what we can do. I mean, if you're local to me, I'm always shelling out my counselor's name and number, so I'm happy to introduce you. But that would be the biggest.
Well, what you did for yourself and are doing is incredible, and Thanks. What you are doing for your family is life-changing, like you said. So thank you for just realizing that you needed help, because I think that's the first step, is just realizing and acknowledging it, and acknowledging that it's okay. It's okay to be in a place. It's just not okay to stay there, because it doesn't, it doesn't help you, it doesn't grow you. And so take what you need, take the time for yourself so that you can, get out of it and be who you need to be, not only for yourself, but for your family, like you were mentioning.
Thank you. I know, it's one of those things where when you're pulled down and someone tries to pull you down with them, even if that's not their intention initially, I had a choice of I could slow my success. I could dull my shine to continue being close in this relationship, or I could continue to walk in the woman that God created me to be. What I learned was that through boundaries, if people are upset that you've created boundaries with them, they're only doing that because it doesn't serve them anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when you can recognize that, you're not here to serve others, you're here to serve God. And then that will work together as He works on their hearts. So trust that, trust who you are, be who you are, know that you're beautiful, You're fearfully and wonderfully made. God loves you and you're not alone.
I don't think we could end on a better note than that. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know it was a little bit deeper than what we normally do on here. We try to make it lighthearted most of the time, but it was so needed. And I know that there's one person out there, even if it's only one person that can identify with this, that this will be completely worth it. So thank you for joining us across the table with us. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.